First Class Harry Dunn from the United States Capitol Police. Officer Harry Dunn acted with remarkable courage and valor to defend both our institution and our people.
The Capitol Police officer assigned to the protective detail of then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi appears to have given false testimony.
This is perjury.
Brought in to corroborate the testimony of another Capitol Police officer.
It is imperative that we establish the truth of that day.
It's a Capitol Police officer who just took the stand in the Oath Keepers trial.
Sentenced to 18 years in prison.
Generations to come will think of him.
It never happened.
The way he unpacks the stories,
I don't conflate my story.
Sounds like something a useful idiot would say.
Officer Harry Dunn, in his new book, Standing My Ground, a Capitol Police officer's fight for accountability and good trouble.
Officer Dunn has been among the first Capitol Police officers to describe what happened to law enforcement on January 6th.
It is expected that when somebody does release a book that they're going to do a quote-unquote book tour, that they're going to make media appearances. The most unique and interesting thing about this book tour that he's on is that for some reason, none other of the Capitol Police officers are allowed to tell their stories.
What if Donald Trump wins again? Would you?
You got anything stronger?
Let's make no mistake about it. There were a lot of officers injured that day. I have reviewed hundreds and hundreds of hours of video, and there was violence. I saw violence there that day with my own eyes. In the dozens of media interviews that he has participated in.
I've seen you on TV many times.
Has anybody ever showed a single second of video of his heroic actions that day?
We need heroes like you.
What we learned from the book, though, he goes into great detail about his own history of therapies, counseling sessions.
And I'm now receiving private counseling therapy for the persistent emotional trauma of that day.
Mostly dealing with anger issues. And of course, we did see some of those anger issues displayed. So he was already distressed, already seeing things, imagining things, escalating things in his own mind in a way that other officers weren't. I'm not going to try and play psychologist because I'm not one. There's just something wrong with him. One of those incidences took place at the top of a stairwell down in the crypt. It's a staircase that leads down to the lower terrace where a lot of officers were receiving first aid for their injuries. He was surrounded by some Metropolitan Police officers when inexplicably he just lost control.
Vice versa. Keep feet.
There was nobody doing any violence of any type in that room at the time. In fact, there was only a very small handful of protesters in the crypt at that moment, and they were all the way across the room, and he just started screaming and shouting obscenities across the room. And at that moment, Captain Ben Smith of the United States Capitol Police ran over to him, put his hand on his shoulder, calm down, Harry, calm down. A couple of minutes later, Harry broke out in a run towards the staircase that led up to what they call the small rotunda or the speaker's lobby. And as he's running towards those stairs, he accidentally hit the button on his magazine from his M4 automatic weapon. The magazine bounces off the floor. 3 other officers run over. One of them picks it up and hands it to him. Then Harry runs to the top of the stairs. He's clearly agitated. He's in a high level of distress, not because he's been fighting with anyone. When he reached the top of that stairs, that was the moment when Oath Keeper Ken Harrelson saw this highly distressed officer carrying an automatic rifle arrive to the top of the stairs. Already something's going wrong in his head. There wasn't a single officer carried off on a stretcher that day. There was another scene that took place in which he describes, in the book, not so terribly accurately. He says that he saw a protester who was leaning against the wall. Another police officer had given this protester a bottle of water to wash out his eyes because the protester had been sprayed with pepper spray. The book says that he was screaming obscenities to that protester and yanks the bottle of water out of his hand and then throws it, in his own words, halfway across the rotunda floor. Harry can be seen entering the rotunda. He's not running, but he does inexplicably walk the full length of the floor. He walks over to this lady sitting on a bench. She's wearing red and complete far end of the Capitol, or the rotunda from where he entered. He's screaming at her, and she's doing nothing. And immediately an officer has to come over and intervene and actually takes the lady away from Officer Dunn. Then Dunn walks over to the middle of the rotunda floor where a protester is sitting in the middle. He's not leaning against the wall. He's sitting on the floor. He has 4 or 5 other police officers around him. He does have a full bottle of water in his hand, and inexplicably, Dunn reaches down and violently snatches the bottle of water out of his hands, but he doesn't throw it across the floor. He just then ambles across to the other end of the rotunda and walks over and places the bottle on the pedestal of a statue. Then a higher ranking officer can be seen talking to another member of what they call the M4 unit, points at Dunn, and basically you can see from his hand motion says, "Get him out of here." And that officer immediately goes over to Dunn and immediately waves him, grabs him, and gets him out of there. Once again, he was not in a position where he was de-escalating, where he was calm and collected, where he was in control of his own faculties. Officer Dunn, as a personal training officer who teaches de-escalation tactics and procedures, was not following the lessons that he himself taught those who he was in charge of training.
Get the out of here!
When the January 6th committee was first put together, Nancy Pelosi is famously recorded as saying,
And it's also our duty to establish and preserve the narrative of that day.
the stories we have coming out are going to show that there was a concerted effort to manipulate information, manipulate evidence, suppress evidence, and create evidence that does not exist in order to reach those goals of establishing the narrative.
He's been put out as a hero. He received some Citizens Award from Joe Biden. MSNBC has treated him like a god. As opposed to Tareq Johnson, what he actually did on January 6th that was heroic, but he's been villainized.
I reached out to Harry. I've been very fair in my series about the Capitol Police. I believe that they were set up that day. I told Harry right from the get-go that I believe that he was set up as well. My heart goes out to him, and I hope that Harry will eventually see way to maybe talk to me a little bit further and a little deeper and give me a little bit more inside information.